They say you never truly know someone until they show you who they really are. I thought I knew my son Marcus. I thought I knew what kind of man I'd raised. For 68 years I'd lived my life with purpose, dignity, and love. I'd worked 2 jobs to put Marcus through college. I'd sacrifice vacations, new clothes, even medical procedures I probably needed, all to make sure he had every opportunity one never did. And on that cold December morning, 3 days before Christmas, when he looked me dead in the eye and said, "I control your life now, Mom. Everything you have, everything you are. It all goes through me," I realized I'd been living with a stranger wearing my son's face. But if he thought those words would break me, he had another thing coming. Because the woman who survived poverty, discrimination, and widowhood at 45 wasn't about to let anyone, not even her own child, strip away her dignity. My name is Evelyn Carter, and this is the story of how I took back my power. I need to take you back to understand how we got here. Back to 1978, when I was a young mother of 21 with a 2-year-old boy and a husband who worked construction. We lived in a small apartment in South Philadelphia, the kind of place where the radiator clanged all night, and you could hear your neighbors' conversations through the walls. But it was ours and we were happy. Jerome, my husband, he had dreams. Big dreams. He wanted to start his own construction company, wanted to build us a real home, wanted to give Marcus everything we never had growing up. Those dreams died on a Tuesday afternoon in March when Jerome's scaffolding gave way on a job site. He fell 3 stories. The hospital called me at the diner where I worked the lunch shift. By the time I got there, he was already gone. 26 years old, and just like that, my whole world collapsed. I had 2 choices, crumble or build. I chose to build. I kept my job at the diner, taking as many shifts as they'd give me. Then I got a night job cleaning offices downtown. Marcus would stay with my neighbor Mrs. Chun while I worked. 4 hours of sleep a night became my normal. My hands were always raw from cleaning chemicals. My feet always ached. But Marcus never went hungry. He always had clean clothes. He always had school supplies. Whatever that boy needed, I made sure he got it. When Marcus was 7, he came home from school crying because the other kids had been talking about their fathers at career day. He asked me why his daddy had to die. I held him close and told him, "Your father loved you more than anything in this world. And even though he's gone, his love is still here. It's in every meal I cook you, every time I tuck you in, every sacrifice I make. That's your father's love working through me." Marcus looked up at me with those big brown eyes and said, "When I grow up, I'm going to take care of you, Mama. I promise." I held on to that promise for 40 years. As Marcus got older, I watched him excel. He was smart, not just book smart, but clever. He knew how to talk to people, how to make them like him. In high school, he was student council president. Teachers loved him. His friends' parents were always telling me what a wonderful young man I'd raised. And I was so proud, so incredibly proud. Every award he won, every accomplishment, felt like validation that all those sleepless nights had been worth it. When Marcus got into Temple University, I cried. Not just because I was proud, though I was bursting with pride. I cried because I knew it was going to be nearly impossible to afford. The financial aid covered some, but not enough. Not nearly enough. So I picked up a 3rd job on weekends, doing alterations for a local dry cleaner. I was 51 years old, working 70-hour weeks, and my body was screaming at me to stop. But I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. This was my son's future. Marcus studied business. He talked about becoming an entrepreneur, maybe starting a consulting firm. He had this charisma, this confidence that made you believe he could do anything. During his junior year, he brought home a girl named Vanessa. She was beautiful, poised, from a wealthy family in the suburbs. Her father was a lawyer. Her mother was on the board of some charity organization. I remember thinking, she's out of his league. But Marcus had charm to spare, and Vanessa seemed genuinely taken with him. They got married a year after graduation. It was a big wedding. Vanessa's family spared no expense. I wore a dress I'd made myself because I couldn't afford anything fitting for such a fancy occasion. During the mother-son dance, Marcus whispered in my ear, "Everything I am I owe to you, Mama. I'm going to make you so proud. I'm going to take care of you the way you took care of me." I believed him. God help me, I believed every word. The first few years of their marriage seemed good. Marcus got a job at a consulting firm. Vanessa worked in marketing. They bought a townhouse in a nice neighborhood. I was still in my small apartment, still working, though I'd finally cut back to just one full-time job at the hospital doing administrative work. My body couldn't handle the multiple jobs anymore. I was in my 60s and arthritis had set in. My knees hurt all the time. Some mornings I could barely get out of bed. Marcus and Vanessa had their first child, a daughter named Brianna, when Marcus was 31. I was over the moon. A grandbaby. I offered to help with childcare. I thought it would be a way to spend time with them, to be useful. Vanessa politely declined. They hired a nanny instead. A 22-year-old girl from Sweden who lived in their guest room and got paid more than I'd ever made in my life. That should have been my first clue. But I told myself it was fine. They were successful, they could afford help, and I should just be happy for them. So I visited when invited, always calling first, always bringing a gift for Brianna. I noticed that Marcus seemed stressed. He complained about work, about how hard he was working, about how expensive everything was. I tried to be sympathetic. I'd loan him money when he asked, small amounts at first. 200 here, 500 there. He always said he'd pay me back, but he never did. I didn't push it. He was my son. You don't keep a ledger with your children. 2 years after Brianna, they had a son, Marcus Jr. Around this time, I started having health issues. My blood pressure was high, and my doctor found some irregularities in my heartbeat. Nothing immediately life-threatening, but concerning enough that I needed medication and regular monitoring. The medical bills started piling up. My insurance covered most of it, but the co-pays and deductibles were eating through my modest savings. I mentioned this to Marcus one evening when I'd been invited for dinner. I wasn't asking for money, just venting the way you do with family. He barely looked up from his phone. "That's tough, Mom," he said absently. "Healthcare in this country is ridiculous." Vanessa had been more direct. "Have you looked into Medicaid?" she asked, in that tone people use when they're trying to sound helpful, but are actually just uncomfortable with your problems. I had looked into it. I made just slightly too much to qualify. I was in that terrible middle zone, not poor enough for assistance, not wealthy enough to be comfortable. But I didn't want to burden them with details, so I just smiled and said I'd figure it out. That's what I did. I always figured it out. When I was 65, I finally retired. My pension was small and Social Security didn't go far, but I'd managed to save a little. I'd also paid off my apartment. It had taken 40 years, but it was mine. That little 2-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood that had gotten rougher over the decades. That was my castle. My safe place. The walls held memories of raising Marcus, of Jerome's presence, of every struggle and triumph. I wasn't rich, but I had enough. I had my independence. Marcus started calling more frequently after I retired. First, I was thrilled. Maybe now that I had more free time, we could be closer. We could build the relationship I'd always dreamed of. But the calls always seemed to have an agenda. He needed to borrow money for Brianna's private school tuition. The roof needed repairs on their house. The car broke down and they needed a new one. Each request came with the same promise. "I'll pay you back, Mom. Things are just tight right now." I gave what I could. Even when it meant skipping my own medication some months. Even when it meant eating less so my grocery budget would stretch. He was my son. His children were my grandchildren. If I couldn't help family, what was the point of anything? Looking back now, I can see how the pattern developed. How slowly, incrementally, I went from being his mother to being his resource. But when you're in it, when you love someone that deeply, you don't see it. You make excuses. You tell yourself they're just going through a hard time. You tell yourself it won't always be this way. The shift became more apparent after Vanessa's father died. She inherited a substantial amount. I never knew the exact figure, but from the way they started spending, it was significant. They sold the townhouse and bought a 4-bedroom colonial in the suburbs with a pool. They took vacations to the Bahamas, to Hawaii, to Europe. Meanwhile, my requests to visit became increasingly inconvenient. They were always busy, always traveling, always had some commitment. When I did see them, usually on holidays, I noticed how Brianna and Marcus Jr. looked at me. Not with the warmth grandchildren are supposed to have, but with a kind of distant politeness. Like I was an elderly aunt they had to be nice to, not their grandmother who loved them with every fiber of her being. Vanessa had done that. I knew it, though I never said anything. She'd poisoned them against me, Made me seem lesser because I didn't have money, didn't live in the right neighborhood, didn't fit into their new social circle. But Marcus, my Marcus, he still called when he needed something. And fool that I was, I still gave. The turning point came last September. I'd been having more health issues, my heart condition was worsening, and I'd had a small stroke. Nothing major, the doctors said, but it was a warning sign. I was scared. For the first time in my life, I felt truly old, truly vulnerable. I called Marcus not for money, not for anything except comfort. I needed my son. He came to visit, but Vanessa and the kids stayed home. We sat in my small living room, and I told him about the stroke, about my fears. I told him I'd been thinking about what would happen to me if I got really sick, if I could no longer take care of myself. That's when Marcus leaned forward, his expression serious. Mom, I've been thinking about this too. Your neighborhood isn't safe anymore. This apartment building is falling apart. You're not getting any younger, and these stairs, he gestured to the 3 flights I had to climb to reach my door. They're not safe for someone with your health issues. Everything he said was true, but hearing it laid out like that made me feel ancient. Helpless. I have a solution, Marcus continued. Vanessa and I have been talking. We think you should sign your apartment over to me. That way I can sell it and use the money to get you into a nice assisted living facility. Somewhere safe with medical staff on hand. You'd have people to check on you, activities, meals provided. You wouldn't have to worry about anything. My heart sank. Assisted living? Marcus, I'm not ready for that. I'm still independent. I can take care of myself. Can you? His tone wasn't mean, but it was pointed. Mom, you just had a stroke. What if something happens and no one finds you for days? What if you fall on those stairs? I worry about you all the time. Sounded like concern. It sounded like love. But something felt off. I appreciate you thinking about my future, I said carefully. But this is my home. I'm not ready to leave it. Marcus sighed. I knew you'd be resistant. You've always been stubborn. He said it like it was a character flaw. Look, let's just get the paperwork done. You don't have to move right away. We'll take our time finding the right place. But at least this way I can handle things for you. You won't have to worry about property taxes, maintenance, any of that. Let me take care of you the way you took care of me. There it was. The promise he'd made as a 7-year-old boy, now being used as leverage. I should have said no. Every instinct screamed at me to refuse. But he was my son. He'd never steered me wrong before. And maybe he was right, maybe I was being stubborn. Maybe it was time to accept that I needed help. Let me think about it, I said. Over the next few weeks, Marcus called regularly. Each time he had new arguments. He'd found a great assisted living place that had an opening. He'd talked to a real estate agent who said my apartment could sell for a decent amount. He'd researched facilities and found one that even had activities I'd enjoy. The pressure was constant but always wrapped in concern. In love. In the promise that this was what was best for me. I felt myself weakening. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was holding on to the past too tightly. Maybe it was selfish to make him worry. In late October I finally agreed. Marcus brought the papers over himself. He'd already had them drawn up by a lawyer. His wife's cousin, he said. I should have had my own lawyer look at them, but Marcus assured me it was all standard. It's just a transfer of deed, Mom. Simple stuff. This just makes me the legal owner so I can handle the sale and all the paperwork. It protects you from having to deal with any of the hassle. I signed. My hand shook as I wrote my name, but I told myself it was just nerves. Just the adjustment of accepting help after a lifetime of being the strong one. Marcus hugged me. You did the right thing, Mom. I promise you everything's going to be better now. 2 weeks later, on a gray November morning, there was a knock on my door. I opened it to find a well-dressed man in his 30s holding a clipboard. Evelyn Carter? He asked. Yes. I'm James Chun with Prestige Realty. I'm here to do the walkthrough for the listing. My blood ran cold. Listing? He looked confused. Yes, for the apartment sale. The owner, Marcus Carter, hired us to handle the sale. He said you'd be expecting me. I wasn't expecting him. Marcus hadn't mentioned listing the apartment. We hadn't even started looking at assisted living places. With shaking hands I called Marcus. It rang 4 times before he answered. Mom, I'm in a meeting. Marcus, there's a real estate agent at my door. He says you hired him to sell my apartment. A pause. Oh, right. Yeah, I was going to mention that. Jim Chin's firm is the best in the area. He'll get us top dollar. But we haven't even looked at assisted living facilities yet. Where am I supposed to go? Another pause, longer this time. We'll figure that out. But Mom, we need to move fast on this. The market's good right now. We can't waste this opportunity. Marcus, this is my home. I'm still living here. And you'll keep living there until it sells. It's not like you have to move tomorrow. His tone was growing impatient. Look, I really have to go. Just cooperate with Jim, okay? Let him take his pictures and measurements. I'll call you later. He hung up before I could respond. I let Jim do his walkthrough, smiling apologetically at my confusion. When he left, I sat on my couch and stared at the walls that had held my whole life. What had I done? Over the next week, I saw the listing go live online. A neighbor showed me on her phone. There was my apartment, my furniture, my things displayed for strangers to browse. The description called it a fixer-upper with potential, in an up-and-coming neighborhood. The price seemed low to me, but what did I know about real estate? When I called Marcus to ask about it, he was dismissive. Mom, you're not a real estate expert. I am. Well, I work with people who are. We priced it to sell quickly. That's good for everyone. But shouldn't I have some say in this? It's my home. It was your home. Legally, it's mine now. You signed it over, remember? That's the whole point, so you don't have to worry about these decisions. The way he said it, so matter-of-fact, sent ice through my veins. Marcus. I have to go, Mom. I'll talk to you later. He didn't call later. Not that day, not the next. I called him several times, but he didn't answer. Finally, Vanessa picked up his phone. Evelyn, Marcus is very busy right now. Whatever you need to discuss can wait. I need to talk to my son about my living situation. Your son has spent hours arranging everything for your benefit. Her voice was sharp now, the polite veneer cracking. Maybe instead of constantly questioning his decisions, you should be grateful. Do you have any idea how much time and energy he's putting into managing your affairs? I never asked him to manage my affairs. I never asked for any of this. No, you just spent 40 years manipulating him with guilt, making him feel like he owed you everything. Well, he's paid his debt. He's more than paid it. And frankly, I'm tired of you acting like you're the victim here. You signed those papers willingly. No one forced you. So maybe take some responsibility for your own decisions. She hung up. I sat there, phone in hand, trying to process what had just happened. Manipulating him with guilt? All I'd ever done was love my son. All I'd ever done was sacrifice for his happiness. How had that become manipulation? That night I barely slept. I kept replaying every conversation, every interaction from the past few months. The constant pressure to sign. The rushed paperwork. The immediate listing without my knowledge. And that phrase Marcus had used. Legally, it's mine now. The next morning I did something I should have done weeks ago. I went to see a lawyer. Her name was Patricia Morrison, and her office was in a modest building not far from where I lived. She was about 50, with kind eyes and no-nonsense demeanor. I told her everything. She listened without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Mrs. Carter, I'm going to be blunt with you. You've been taken advantage of. The good news is there may be legal remedies available. The bad news is pursuing them could be costly and emotionally draining. And there's no guarantee of success." My hands were trembling. What are my options? She explained that we could potentially challenge the property transfer on grounds of undue influence or lack of informed consent, but it would require proving that Marcus had pressured me or misled me about what I was signing. We could file an injunction to prevent the sale while the challenge was pending. Or I could simply try to negotiate with Marcus, ask him to reverse the transfer voluntarily. What would you advise? I asked. Patricia leaned back in her chair. Honestly, I'd advise you to think very carefully about what you want here. It's not just about the property. It's about your relationship with your son, your grandchildren, your family. Legal action could destroy whatever's left of those relationships. Only you can decide if that's a price you're willing to pay. I thanked her and left, Her card tucked in my purse. I had a lot to think about. For the next few days, I tried to reach Marcus again. He finally called back almost a week later. Sorry I've been out of touch, Mom. Things have been crazy. But I've got great news. We already have 2 offers on the apartment. Both above asking price. This is fantastic. Marcus, I don't want to sell. Don't be ridiculous. You can't stay there. We've been over this. Then give me back my apartment. Let me decide what I want to do with my own property. Silence. Then in a voice I'd never heard him use before, cold hard, he said, "It's not your property anymore. It's mine. I'm sorry you're having regrets, but the papers are signed. It's done. Marcus, I'm your mother. And I'm trying to do what's best for you, even though you're too stubborn to see it. Look, once the apartment sells, we'll have money to get you into a good facility. You'll be taken care of. That's what matters. What if I don't want to go to a facility? What if I want to use that money to find another apartment, somewhere I can still be independent?" He laughed. Actually laughed. "Mom, you're 68 years old with a heart condition. Independence isn't realistic anymore. The sooner you accept that, the better." Something broke in me then. Something that had been cracking for months finally shattered. "Give me back my property, Marcus. Please." No. Just like that. No explanation, no sympathy. Just no. Then I'll take legal action. I'll fight this. Another laugh, but this one was uglier. "With what money, Mom? You're broke. You've given me everything you had. Even if you found a lawyer willing to work for free, do you really think you can outlawyer me?" Vanessa said. "With what money, Mom? You're broke. You've given me everything you had. Even if you found a lawyer willing to work for free, do you really think you can outlawyer me?" Vanessa's family has connections. Her cousin who drew up those papers, he's one of the best real estate attorneys in the state. You signed over your property willingly, in sound mind, with perfectly legal documentation. No judge is going to side with you just because you changed your mind. The words hit me like physical blows. This wasn't my son speaking. This was a stranger who happened to have my son's voice. "So that's it." My voice cracked. "You're just going to take everything from me?" "I'm not taking anything. You gave it to me. And honestly, Mom, you should be thanking me. I'm the only one who cares enough to make sure you're taken care of in your old age. Where else would you go? Who else would deal with all of this?" "Marcus, please. I have to go. We'll talk when you're being more reasonable." He hung up. I sat in my apartment, or what used to be my apartment, and for the first time since Jerome died, I let myself completely fall apart. I cried for hours. Not just for the apartment, but for everything. For the son I thought I'd raised, who apparently never existed. For the 40 years of sacrifice that had led to this moment. For the future I'd imagined, where I'd be a beloved grandmother. Where my golden years would be filled with family and love. That future was gone. It had never been real. But here's the thing about hitting rock bottom. There's nowhere to go but up. And I didn't survive everything I'd survived by staying down. The next morning my tears were gone. In their place was something harder, clearer. I called Patricia Morrison and told her I wanted to fight. We filed an emergency injunction to halt the sale, citing undue influence and lack of informed consent. Patricia explained that we had a narrow window. Once the apartment sold and the money changed hands, it would be much harder to unravel. We needed to act fast. Marcus called me within hours of being served with the legal papers. He was furious. "What the hell do you think you're doing? Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is? I have people asking me why my own mother is suing me. I'm not suing you. I'm asking the court to review a property transfer that I was pressured into." "Pressured? I helped you. I've been trying to help you this entire time. And this is how you repay me? By taking my home without my real consent? By selling it without even telling me? That's help. You're senile. That's what I'm going to tell the judge. You're a confused old woman who doesn't know what's good for her." The cruelty in his voice was staggering. "Marcus, why are you doing this? Why do you even want my apartment? You have a beautiful home. You have money from Vanessa's inheritance. You want to know why?" His voice was savage now. "Because I'm tired of being the son of the poor woman from the bad neighborhood. Do you know what it's like introducing Vanessa's family to you? Having them see where I came from? That apartment is a reminder of everything I've spent my adult life trying to escape. And yeah, the money from the sale will be nice too. We have expenses you can't even imagine. Private school tuition, country club memberships, keeping up appearances. That all costs money. So this was never about helping me. It was about erasing your past. Call it whatever you want. The bottom line is that apartment is mine now, and your little legal stunt is just delaying the inevitable. Drop the injunction, Mom. You can't win this. Maybe not. But I can try. He made a sound of disgust. Fine. Waste what little money you have left on lawyers. But don't come crying to me when you lose everything. I already lost everything that mattered. You made sure of that. I hung up before he could respond. The legal battle was exactly as hard as Patricia warned. Marcus's lawyers, yes, plural, because apparently Vanessa's family had multiple attorneys at their disposal, filed motion after motion. They painted me as exactly what Marcus had threatened. A confused elderly woman with health issues who couldn't be trusted to make sound decisions. They brought up my stroke, my heart condition, even my age as evidence that I lacked capacity. Patricia fought back hard. She argued that I'd been coerced, that the speed of the transaction and the immediate listing without my knowledge demonstrated bad faith on Marcus's part. She subpoenaed phone records showing how many times Marcus had called me in the weeks before I signed, establishing a pattern of pressure. She had me evaluated by an independent doctor who confirmed I was of sound mind and fully capable of making my own decisions. But Marcus's team was relentless. They brought up every dollar I'd ever given him, framing it as evidence of my pattern of poor financial decisions. They suggested I was motivated by spite, that I'd regretted helping my son and was now trying to punish him. They made me sound like a bitter old woman, angry that her son had built a successful life. The worst part was the character assassination. Vanessa testified, actually sat in court and testified, that I'd always been manipulative, that I'd used guilt to control Marcus his entire life, that she'd watched me weaponize my sacrifices to make him feel obligated to me. She said I'd been calling constantly, demanding money and attention, making their lives difficult. She painted a picture of me that was so distorted, so utterly false, that I barely recognized myself in her description. Marcus testified too. He sat on that stand and told the court that he'd been worried about me for years, that my mental state had been declining, that he'd only taken control of the apartment to protect me from my own bad judgment. He talked about how hard it had been to watch me struggle, how guilty he felt that he couldn't do more. He actually cried on the stand. My son, who hadn't shed a tear when I told him about my stroke, cried crocodile tears for the judge. It was masterful. And it was working. Patricia pulled me aside during a recess. Evelyn, I need to be straight with you. This isn't going well. Their lawyers are good, and they're making you look unstable. The judge is sympathetic to Marcus's argument that he was trying to help. Unless we have something stronger. What do we need? Proof. Clear, undeniable proof that Marcus intended to defraud you, or that he actively deceived you about the nature of what you were signing. Without that, this just looks like a family disagreement over an estate planning decision. I went home that night defeated. I'd been so certain that justice would prevail, that the truth would be obvious. But Marcus was right, he had better lawyers, more resources, and a more convincing story. My truth, that I'd been manipulated by my own son, sounded like the paranoid ravings of an old woman who regretted signing over her property. I was going to lose. And when I lost, I'd lose everything. The apartment would sell, Marcus would control the money, and I'd end up wherever he decided to put me. Maybe an assisted living facility if I was lucky. More likely the cheapest nursing home he could find, somewhere he could stash me and forget about me. That's when I remembered something. A conversation from months ago before everything fell apart. Marcus had been at my apartment, and he'd taken a call from Vanessa. I'd been in the kitchen making tea, but I could hear him in the living room. He'd been talking about me, about my apartment. I hadn't thought much of it at the time, just assumed he was updating his wife about his visit. But now, thinking back, I remembered the tone of his voice. The words he'd used. Yeah, she'll sign. I've been working on her for weeks. Once we have the deed, we list it immediately. No, she won't have time to change her mind. By the time she realizes what's happening, it'll be too late. The money? We'll keep it tied up in looking for facilities until she gives up. Eventually, she'll take whatever we offer her. At the time, I told myself I must have misheard. That he couldn't have been talking about me that way. But I hadn't misheard. I'd just been too much in denial to accept what I was hearing. And I'd been on the phone with my friend Dorothy at the time. We'd been talking when Marcus arrived. And I'd put her on hold but forgotten to disconnect the call. Dorothy had stayed on the line, probably trying to figure out if I was coming back. Which meant I scrambled for my phone. Dorothy was 82 and didn't have a cell phone, but she had a landline. I called her. Dorothy, this is going to sound strange, but do you remember back in October when we were talking on the phone and Marcus came to visit me? Oh yes, dear. You put me on hold and never came back. I waited about 20 minutes before I hung up. My heart was racing. While you were on hold, could you hear anything? Well, yes. Your phone must have been sitting near where you were talking. I could hear you and Marcus chatting. I didn't want to eavesdrop, but I kept waiting for you to pick back up. Dorothy, I need you to think very carefully. Did you hear Marcus take a phone call? Did you hear him talking about my apartment? There was a long pause. Yes. Yes, I did. I felt uncomfortable hearing it, to be honest. The way he was talking about you. I wanted to say something, but I didn't want to interfere in family business. And I thought maybe I was misunderstanding. Would you be willing to testify about what you heard? Another pause, longer this time. Evelyn, that's your son. Are you sure you want to do this? I've never been more sure of anything. Then yes. I'll testify. What he's doing to you, it's not right. I'll help however I can. I called Patricia immediately. She was skeptical at first, elderly witness, phone conversation from months ago, possible reliability issues, but it was the best shot we had. Dorothy was magnificent on the stand. She might have been 82, but she was sharp as a tack. She recounted the conversation with perfect clarity, explaining how she'd been on hold, how she'd heard Marcus's side of the phone call with Vanessa, how he'd explicitly talked about manipulating me into signing and then keeping control of the money. Marcus's lawyers tried to tear her apart. They questioned her memory, suggested she was a biased friend, implied she might be confused about dates. But Dorothy didn't budge. She looked that lawyer right in the eye and said, "Young man, I may be old, but I know what I heard. And what I heard was a son plotting to steal from his mother." The judge's expression shifted. It was subtle, but I saw it. For the first time, doubt crept into his eyes when he looked at Marcus. Patricia moved to subpoena Marcus and Vanessa's phone records from that specific date, to prove the call had happened. Marcus's lawyers fought it, which only made them look worse. Why fight the release of phone records if they had nothing to hide? The judge ordered the records released. They showed exactly what Dorothy said. A 14-minute call between Marcus and Vanessa at the exact time Dorothy indicated, made from my apartment based on cell tower data. The tide was turning. Patricia then called me to the stand. This time, instead of just asking about the property transfer, she walked me through my entire history with Marcus. Every sacrifice. Every loan I'd given him that he never repaid. Every time I'd gone without so he could have more. She had me detail every phone call where he'd pressured me to sign, every argument he'd used, every promise he'd made and broken. By the time I finished, I was crying. Not manipulative tears, not performed emotion. Just raw, honest grief for the relationship I'd lost. For the son who'd turned into someone I didn't recognize. The judge took a recess to consider. We waited for 3 hours. Patricia tried to prepare me for the possibility that even with Dorothy's testimony, we might not win. The legal standard was high, and Marcus's lawyers had done a good job muddying the waters. When we reconvened, the judge looked tired. He delivered his ruling in a measured, careful tone. After reviewing all the evidence and testimony, this court finds that the property transfer was executed under conditions of undue influence. The evidence demonstrates that the respondent engaged in a systematic pattern of pressure and coercion, exploiting the petitioner's trust and her reasonable reliance on their familial relationship. The phone call testimony, corroborated by phone records, establishes that the respondent's intentions were not, as claimed, to benefit the petitioner, but rather to acquire the property for his own financial gain. The transfer is hereby declared void. The property is returned to Evelyn Carter, effective immediately. The injunction preventing sale is made permanent. I couldn't breathe. Patricia grabbed my hand and squeezed. The judge wasn't done. Furthermore, this court takes a dim view of children who exploit their elderly parents. Mrs. Carter spent decades sacrificing for her son. The betrayal of that trust is unconscionable. The respondent is ordered to pay all of Mrs. Carter's legal fees. This court is adjourned. I'd won. I'd actually won. Marcus stormed out of the courtroom without looking at me. Vanessa followed, her face a mask of fury. Their lawyers packed up quickly, avoiding eye contact. Patricia hugged me. You did it. I wasn't sure we could pull it off, but you did it. I couldn't even feel happy yet. I was too overwhelmed, too emotionally exhausted. The apartment was mine again. I had my home back. But what I'd lost, my son, my grandchildren, the family I'd dreamed of, that was gone forever. Or so I thought. 3 weeks after the court decision, it was early December. I was in my apartment, the word still felt sweet, putting up my small Christmas tree. I didn't expect to have any visitors for the holidays. Marcus hadn't spoken to me since the trial. I'd sent cards to Brianna and Marcus Jr., but I hadn't received any response. I was okay with that. Or I was learning to be okay with it. I joined a senior center and was making new friends. I'd started volunteering at a community kitchen. I was building a life that didn't revolve around waiting for my son to need something from me. There was a knock on my door. When I opened it, Brianna stood there. My granddaughter. 15 years old now, tall and beautiful. She was alone. Grandma. Her voice was small. Can I come in? I couldn't speak. I just opened the door wider. She came in and stood awkwardly in my living room, looking around like she'd never been there before. In truth, she probably didn't remember much. It had been so long since she'd visited. How did you get here? I finally managed to ask. I took the bus. Dad doesn't know I'm here. She looked at me and her eyes were full of tears. Grandma, I need to tell you something. I need to apologize. Sweetheart, you don't have anything to apologize for. Yes, I do. We all do. Mom's been lying to us about you for years. She told us you were mean, that you were always trying to guilt Dad into giving you money, that you were manipulative and toxic. She said we needed to keep our distance for Dad's mental health. And we believed her. I believed her. My heart clenched. Brianna. But then the court case happened and I heard things. I heard Dad on the phone with his lawyer and Grandma, the things he was saying about you. The way he talked about you. It made me sick. So I did something I'm not proud of. I read some of his emails. Old ones from before all this started. And I saw how he talked to you. How he was always asking you for money. How you always helped even when you probably couldn't afford it. She was crying now. You paid for my private school. Dad told me Vanessa's family paid, but it was you, wasn't it? You gave him the money. I nodded, not trusting my voice. You've been giving us everything, and all we've done is treat you like you're nothing. Like you're an embarrassment. I'm so sorry, Grandma. I'm so sorry. I pulled her into my arms and held her while she cried. My granddaughter. The little girl I'd barely been allowed to know. She was here and she was sorry, and it felt like a tiny piece of my broken heart was being glued back together. I can't stay long, she said when she finally pulled away. If Dad finds out I'm here, he'll lose it. But I had to see you. I had to tell you that I know the truth now. And once I'm 18, once I can make my own decisions, I want to have a relationship with you. A real one. I'd like that more than anything, I whispered. She hugged me again, fierce and tight. Then she left, disappearing down the stairs as quickly as she'd come. It wasn't reconciliation. It wasn't everything I'd lost. But it was hope. And sometimes hope is enough. The real confrontation came a week later. 3 days before Christmas. I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. It was Vanessa. We need to talk, she said, her voice clipped. Marcus and I are coming over. We'll be there in an hour. She hung up before I could respond. I thought about not being home when they arrived. I thought about calling Patricia and having her present. But some instinct told me I needed to face this alone. Whatever Marcus and Vanessa wanted to say, I needed to hear it without intermediaries. They arrived exactly an hour later. When I opened the door, I was struck by how different they looked. Marcus had lost weight, and there were dark circles under his eyes. Vanessa looked hard, her expression pinched. "Can we come in?" Marcus asked. His voice was subdued, nothing like the cold fury from the trial. I stepped aside and let them enter. We sat in my small living room, an awkward triangle. Nobody spoke for a long moment. Finally, Marcus said, "I need you to know something. We're in trouble. Financial trouble." I waited. Vanessa's father didn't leave her as much as everyone thought. Most of it was tied up in trusts and investments that collapsed. We're drowning in debt. The house, the cars, the private schools, we can't afford any of it. We were counting on the money from your apartment to dig us out. So there it was. The truth finally. "We need your help," Vanessa said, and the desperation in her voice was palpable. "We're about to lose everything. We thought, since you have the apartment back, maybe you could take out a home equity loan. Or we could work out some kind of arrangement where you sell to us and we pay you in installments." "Stop." My voice was quiet, but it cut through her words like a knife. "Just stop." "Mom, please," Marcus started. "No." I stood up and they both fell silent. "For 40 years I gave you everything I had. I worked myself to the bone to give you opportunities one never had. I went without so you could have. I loved you with every fiber of my being. And you repaid me by trying to steal my home. By calling me senile in court. By poisoning my grandchildren against me. I know I made mistakes," Marcus tried again. "Mistakes? You didn't make mistakes, Marcus. You made choices. You chose greed over love. You chose money over your mother. And now that those choices have consequences, you want me to bail you out. Again. If we lose the house, where will we go? What about Brianna and Marcus Jr.? Vanessa's voice was rising, panic setting in. "You should have thought about that before you helped your husband try to steal from an elderly woman. You're educated people with degrees and skills. You'll figure it out. The same way I figured it out when your husband's father died and left me with nothing. The same way I figured it out every time life got hard. You'll survive. You just won't survive comfortably, and that's killing you." Marcus looked at me, and for just a second, I saw the little boy who'd promised to take care of me. The boy I'd raised before he'd become this man I didn't recognize. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened to me. I got caught up in keeping up appearances, in being someone I thought I needed to be. And I lost sight of what actually mattered. I lost sight of you. Maybe it was genuine. Maybe it was just another manipulation. I didn't know anymore, and honestly I didn't care." "I can't help you," I said. "I won't help you. This apartment is all I have. It's my security, my safety net. You tried to take it from me once, and I'll die before I let you or anyone else take it again. So that's it? You're just going to let your own son lose everything?" Vanessa stood up, her voice harsh. "I didn't let you do anything. You did this to yourselves. I'm not responsible for your financial mismanagement. Your spending beyond your means, your obsession with status and appearances. Those are your choices and your consequences. We're family," Vanessa shouted. "Family doesn't steal from each other. Family doesn't lie in court to discredit their mother. Family doesn't poison children against their grandmother. You taught me that, Vanessa. You showed me exactly what family means to you. Nothing, unless there's something to gain from it." Marcus stood too, his face flushed. "I knew you'd do this. I knew you'd be vindictive. This is who you really are, isn't it? Bitter and petty and small." And there it was. The mask slipping again. The real Marcus, the one who thought he was entitled to everything I had simply because he was my son. "You can think whatever you want about me," I said calmly. "I've made my peace with losing you. Because the son I thought I had, the boy I raised, he doesn't exist anymore. Maybe he never did. Maybe I was just projecting what I wanted to see instead of seeing who you really were. But I see you now, Marcus. I see exactly who you are." "You'll regret this," Vanessa hissed. "When you're old and sick and need help, don't come crying to us." I almost laughed. "I'm already old. I'm already sick. And the last thing I would ever do is come to you for help. Now get out of my home." "Mom," Marcus tried one more time. "Get out." They left. I watched through my window as they got into their BMW, the one they apparently couldn't afford, and drove away. And then finally I let myself cry. Not from sadness this time. From relief. From release. from the overwhelming sense of freedom that came with finally letting go. I'd spent 40 years building my identity around being Marcus's mother, around sacrificing for him, providing for him, loving him. And in one conversation I'd severed that tie. I'd chosen myself. It was terrifying. It was liberating. It was necessary. Christmas came. I spent it with Dorothy and some of the other friends I'd made at the senior center. We had a potluck dinner in the community room. It wasn't fancy. There were no expensive gifts or elaborate decorations. But there was laughter. There was warmth. There was genuine affection from people who cared about me not for what I could provide, but for who I was. On Christmas afternoon, a card arrived under my door. Inside was a hand-drawn picture of a Christmas tree and a note in teenage handwriting. "Merry Christmas, Grandma. I love you. I'll visit again soon. Brianna. P.S. Marcus Jr. wants to meet you too. We're working on it." I put the card on my refrigerator and cried happy tears for the first time in months. The epilogue to this story comes 2 years later. I'm 70 now. My heart condition is managed with medication, and I've been stroke-free since that first one. I still live in my apartment. It's still cramped and the neighborhood is still rough, but it's mine. Brianna visits me twice a month. She's 17 now, applying to colleges. We're close in a way I never got to be close with her when she was younger. She tells me about her life, her dreams, her fears. I listen and advise when asked, but mostly I just love her. No strings attached. No expectations. Just love. Marcus Jr. came to visit for the first time 6 months ago. He was awkward at first, clearly uncomfortable, but by the end of the visit he was showing me videos on his phone and laughing at my jokes. He's been back 3 times since. He doesn't talk about his parents and I don't ask. I heard through Brianna that Marcus and Vanessa sold their house. They're renting now, something much smaller. Marcus took a job with a different company, less prestigious but more stable. Vanessa went back to work full-time. They're adjusting to a different life, one where they can't keep up appearances anymore. I don't feel vindicated by their struggles. I don't feel happy about it. Mostly I just feel sad for what could have been. Marcus called me once about a year after that Christmas confrontation. He was drunk and he was crying. He said he was sorry. He said he'd destroyed the most important relationship in his life for money he didn't even end up keeping. He said he wished he could go back and make different choices. I told him I forgave him. I did eventually forgive him. But I also told him that forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. It doesn't erase consequences. It doesn't mean I trust him or want him in my life. He asked if there was any way we could start over, build a new relationship. I told him maybe someday, but not now. The wounds were still too fresh. I needed more time. He accepted that. We haven't spoken since. I'm happy now. Not in the way I imagined I'd be happy at 70. I don't have the close-knit family I dreamed of, the Sunday dinners with children and grandchildren, the sense of being matriarch to a loving clan. But I have my independence. I have my home. I have friends who value me. I have 2 grandchildren who are slowly, carefully building relationships with me on honest foundations. And most importantly, I have my power. The power to make my own decisions. The power to say no. The power to choose myself. Marcus thought he could control my life. He thought that by taking my home, my security, my choices, he could reduce me to someone who had to depend on him, who had to accept whatever scraps of dignity he decided to give me. He was wrong. I took back my power. And I'm never giving it away again. The other day, Dorothy asked me if I regretted taking Marcus to court. If I wished I'd just let him have the apartment and avoided all the pain of the legal battle and the family rupture. I didn't even have to think about it. No, not for a second. Because here's what I learned. You teach people how to treat you. For 40 years, I taught Marcus that he could take from me without consequence. That my needs didn't matter as much as his wants. That my love was unconditional to the point of being exploitable. I taught him that and he learned the lesson well. The court case, the confrontation, the boundary setting, those taught him a different lesson. They taught him that I'm not just a resource to be exploited. That I'm a person with rights and dignity. That there are consequences to betrayal. I don't know if he's learned that lesson yet. Maybe he has, maybe he hasn't. But I've learned mine. That self-respect isn't selfish. That protecting yourself isn't petty. That sometimes love means letting go. I'm 70 years old. I've lived through poverty, widowhood, discrimination, health crises, and betrayal by my own child. I've worked jobs that broke my body and sacrificed things that broke my heart. I've been knocked down more times than I can count. But I'm still here. I'm still standing. I'm still fighting. My son said, "I control your life now." And I said, "Not anymore." That's my story. That's how I took back my power. Not with revenge, not with cruelty, but with the simple, radical act of choosing myself. Of saying that my life, my home, my dignity, they matter. They're mine. And no one, not even the child I gave everything to, gets to take them away from me. If you're in a situation where someone, family, friend, partner, anyone, is trying to control you, trying to take your power, trying to make you small, hear this. You are allowed to fight back. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to choose yourself. It won't be easy. It might cost you relationships you thought were foundational. It might mean standing alone when you expected to be surrounded by love. But your power, your autonomy, your dignity, they're worth fighting for. I'm living proof of that. And if a 68-year-old woman with a heart condition and no money can stand up to lawyers and manipulation and family pressure to reclaim her life, then so can you. Take back your power. It's yours. It always was. Don't let anyone, not anyone, tell you otherwise.